I still have all these washers. There's no mention of washers in these instructions at all. All right, if you've used any luggage options on the KTM 890, you know that this rack works okay, but really could have a little more places for tying down soft luggage specifically. I've got that Tusk set, which is good, but doesn't really tie down super secure here. So today we're going to install the Tusk Top Rack on the KTM 890. So we get this guy open. There's not a lot to this package because it does keep a chunk of the original top rack, at least from what I had read online. So we've got instructions with hardware and the aluminum top rack itself. I think that's it. Okay, definitely you want to make sure you have everything before you get started on something like this. It does look like I have all the hardware, a couple of tall spacers, tall bolts, a bunch of M8 stuff here. I do need to remove the old 45 Torx, and I don't have the right drill bit. It actually wants an 11/32. This is a 5/16, which will be barely too small. I'm gonna see if I can at least make this work. The next size up that I have is 3/8. But it looks like we just have to drill in 2 spots. So we'll see how that goes. But I've got everything, so I'm going to take off these 4 bolts, which are all Torx 45. Just gonna loosen these up. It's off. So one deviation I have from the directions here, it wants you to just kind of drill these phantom holes on the bottom. What I did instead is I laid the plate over the top and I lined up the factory 4 bolts, and then if you can see that little depression, I made a little mark in each slot. So if I flip this over, these ones will be easy. It's just drill that hole out. But on the bottom, I think it's these depressions that it wants you to use. But just to be sure, for my first hole, it's probably this circle. Just to be sure, I'm going to use my own depression on each. If that lines up with the other side, then I'll just drill everything out. All right, I just drilled those out from the other side, and yes, you can see then that's pretty much centered in that little circle just there. So I will go ahead and just drill out all 4 of these circles. I'm going to try that smaller bit, 5/16, and then I'll go to 3/8 if these M8s don't quite fit. I can't really drill and film, but basically I'm going to drop that right there over the trash. And I'll repeat. And that 5/8 worked pretty good. Here's one of the M8s. You can see it fits there pretty well. All right, moving on. Okay, I've got that face down. The tall bolts are up here towards the front of the bike. Little bolts towards the back. Next, it wants me to lay down the piece we took off the bike. Trying to do this with one hand. And you can see that lines up pretty good. Next, we are going to put the passenger grab handles, and I already know that we're going to run into a problem here because this hole is not big enough for that bolt. So this should lay down right there. Everything else lines up. I'm gonna have to drill these out. And pretty simple. Now lined up perfect. That was again just that 5/16 bit. I did it on both sides. You can't even really tell that I did anything. So we will put the other one on as well. Perfect. And as I mentioned before, there's long spacers and short spacers. The long ones go up here on these longer bolts. So the long one drops into there. I've got that short one on already. Short one goes there. So I've got everything lined up. I'm just putting on these nylock washers, very loose. I don't want to get it into the lock material yet. But I realize I still have all these washers. There's no mention of washers in these instructions at all. I have a guess that they might be spacers to fit right here in between the new plate and the KTM factory plate. Because they look like about that width. It'd be hard to do this with one hand. Basically, I'm thinking maybe it's a spacer for that, because it wouldn't go up here, and I should be done. So let me try and put them there. That is not the right place because there's no thread. Now the head of that Torx bolt can't get all the way through. So I will pull that out. I don't know yet where these go. So I've got it kind of loosely on the bike. None of this stuff is tightened quite yet. I still don't see a place for those washers. There's 4 of them. They're not called out, even in the picture. So I think I'm gonna reach out to Rocky Mountain ATV, but I'll call this done for now. Okay, just got off with Rocky Mountain, and they couldn't find a reason for the washers either. So I'm gonna snug all this up. Now on these countersunk M8s, the top of this is a 5mm, and the bottom side's a 14 on that nut. Can't really film and do this, so just have to trust me for this part. All right, totally done. Everything's tightened. These two were a little bit hard to line up. I had to leave these back ones totally undone just to get these ones barely started, and then I could tighten it all down. So I got to look up the torque values for those. I don't have them offhand, but it's looking pretty good. Quite a bit more room. I mean, you can almost see over the stock plate, which is here still. You know, it's got to be at least double the surface area, I would say. So hope that helps. A little bit different than the instructions, but not a ton. Pretty easy to follow. So until next time, enjoy the ride.